Hey everybody, since I feel like there have been a lot of conversations recently about bipolar disorder, some correct, but some very stigmatizing and wrong, today I want to discuss what bipolar 1 and 2 are, how it can feel to those who have it, and what can be done to best manage our symptoms. Now, first, I just want you to know that when properly treated, people with bipolar disorder live wonderful and fulfilling lives. So often it seems that people only want to talk about those who aren't managing their symptoms or who are publicly struggling and mention them as if they represent everyone with bipolar disorder. But they don't. And I also want to mention that anyone with a mental illness is still personally responsible for themselves and what they do. They may just need some professional support to get them into a place where they can make positive choices, and that's okay. Showing compassion and understanding as someone works to manage their symptoms and be better is the most helpful thing that we can do. And I also want to quickly explain how bipolar 1 and bipolar 2 are diagnosed. And of course, the DSM itself is not the end-all and be-all, but it just gives us some symptoms to notice or think of and lets us know how it could be diagnosed. And if you don't know, the DSM is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. Let's talk about bipolar 1 disorder first. In order for someone to be diagnosed with bipolar 1 disorder, they must meet the criteria for a manic episode. This manic episode could have happened following a hypomanic episode, and I'll get into what that is in a minute, or not, and it could be followed by a depressive episode, or not. But one must have a manic episode in order to be diagnosed with bipolar 1 disorder. Now, a manic episode lasts for at least 1 week, and we can have, and now I'm just going to read, what the DSM says. It says that we have to have a distinct period of abnormally and persistently elevated, expansive, or irritable mood. We can also have an increase in goal-oriented behavior, like starting a ton of new projects, deciding to clean the whole house, or start a new business, just to give you a few examples. And during this week or more, we must have 3 or more of the following symptoms. Number 1, inflated self-esteem or grandiosity. Number 2, decreased need for sleep. That's the one that gets me every time. I notice it in my patients. They'll feel like they feel rested after 2 or 3 hours of sleep. Number 3, they're more talkative than usual or feel this pressure to keep talking. If someone's in my office experiencing this, it's like I can't get a word in edgewise. They're speaking so quickly and so pressured, like all the words kind of string together, and that is another symptom. Number 4, they'll have a flight of ideas or subjective experience that thoughts are racing. Like there's just so many good things happening, so many ideas flying into their head, it's hard for them to kind of pin any of them down. Number 5, distractibility. They can be easily drawn to unimportant or irrelevant external stimuli, and it can be reported by themselves or observed. It's kind of like that, the joke people make, even though I know this isn't funny, but they'd be like, oh, squirrel. Like it can feel like that. They're talking about one thing, and think of all the other stuff happening, rapid speech, so many thoughts in their head. It's like other things, the other thoughts that pop in can pull them over and focus on that. And number 6, an increase in goal-directed activity. This can be either socially or at work. And they can also have psychomotor agitation, which is when it's like really hard for us to sit still. We can feel very irritable. I think the irritation that comes along with bipolar disorder isn't talked about enough. And this psychomotor agitation is when we're just, feel so agitated, so worked up, like we have so much energy coursing through our body. And 7, and finally, is excessive involvement in activities that have high potential for painful consequences, like going on buying sprees, making bad business investments, and stuff like that. And it's also important to know that manic episodes cannot be caused by a substance or another medical condition. This kind of just happens on its own as a result of our bipolar disorder. And for many of my patients, mania can feel okay while it's happening. We have so many thoughts and ideas. We don't feel like we need any sleep, and we feel just incredibly good about ourselves. We can feel productive and unstoppable. But just remember, it's very short-lived. And when it's over, a lot of my patients report feeling embarrassed, sad, and hate that they acted out the way that they did. When we are manic, we can make really bad choices, kind of like what I was referencing before, like going on a shopping spree and overspending. And when I talk about overspending, it's like buying 6 boats in one day or spending tens of thousands of dollars on clothes. Or we can be more promiscuous than we usually are, often in reckless or dangerous ways. I've had many patients cheat on their spouses while manic and feel terrible afterward, some sleeping with complete strangers or sex workers. And we can also feel like every idea we're having is our best yet, and we can reach out to people in our lives to tell them about it because we're excited. Or we can try to get them to invest in it. Some of my patients have even tried calling their business partners or colleagues at like 3 a.m. to tell them about their great new venture. So you can start to see why this can be hard to come down from. And the realization that we've acted in ways we normally wouldn't can be difficult to cope with. Not to mention if we got onto social media to share all of our racing thoughts or hosted a live stream while we did something embarrassing. While we're manic or hypomanic, we're not ourselves, and we can't think clearly. And we really just need to get some professional help and honestly sleep for a few days. Next, I want to briefly discuss bipolar 2 disorder because it's often ignored or rolled into bipolar 1. I think a lot of people assume that there is just bipolar disorder. They don't even know that there are these 2 different components. But I want you to know that bipolar 1 and bipolar 2 can look and feel very different. Oh, and if you want a more full description of both bipolar disorders, you can watch my videos on them, and I will link my playlist at the end of this video, so stay tuned till then. Now, in order to be diagnosed with bipolar 2 disorder, we must meet the criteria for a hypomanic episode and have had a current or past major depressive episode. And hypomania is what those with bipolar 1 usually kind of hit on their way to mania. It can be just as uncomfortable and embarrassing, and it has the same list of symptoms, but it's usually just not as severe, lasting at least 4 consecutive days instead of an entire week. And if I'm doing my job correctly, when I see my bipolar 1 patients in hypomania start to get a sense of this elevated mood or lack of need for sleep, I get them in immediately to see their psychiatrist, and I do my best to prevent them from going into full-blown mania. And all in all, hypomania is just uncomfortable and upsetting as mania. It just doesn't last as long. The real issue I see in my bipolar 2 patients is in their major depressive episodes. And that is when, if you're wondering what that is, it's when we have a depressed mood and loss of enjoyment in things, as well as at least 5 of the following: changes in our appetite or sleep patterns, feeling fatigued, having an inability to concentrate, thoughts of death or suicide, feeling easily agitated, or like our thoughts and actions are kind of slowed. And finally, these symptoms must occur for most days during the same 2-week period. And what I find most common is those with any bipolar disorder spend a majority of their time in a major depressive episode. And too often, when we go and see a psychiatrist, they prescribe us an antidepressant, which would help if we only had depression. But if we do in fact have bipolar disorder, that can push us out of depression into a hypomanic or full manic episode. For many of my patients with bipolar 2, that's how they find out that it's not just depression. But for those with bipolar 1, while that can be the case too, everybody's different, but it's usually noticed before that when they have their first manic episode. And while an antidepressant may not be a good fit for those of us with bipolar disorder, mood stabilizers and atypical antipsychotics can help. And that's why it's vitally important that we see a psychiatrist, get properly assessed, and find a medication regimen that works for us. A lot of artists or celebrities talk about how medication doesn't let them create the way that they want to, or they don't feel like themselves. But I have to honestly say that I think it's best for us to be on medication so that we can prevent any of the highs and lows from happening, which can stop us from having to deal with any of the consequences from those highs and lows later on. And I don't think you just have to be put on whatever medication they recommend. Feel free to ask questions about them. What are the side effects? How long do I have to be on this? See if there are other options out there. And know that you might have to try out a few until you find the one that works with you and helps you feel like the best version of yourself. And seeing a therapist is really important too. They can help us understand our own experience with bipolar disorder, because like I said, everyone is different, what our early signs of hypomania or mania are, and they can give us some tools to deal with the depressive symptoms that usually follow. Like our physical health, we have to look after ourselves. And those with bipolar disorder are no different. We need to get a supportive and understanding mental health team and possibly have some things in place to prevent us from taking any destructive action, like putting a limit on our debit or credit cards, or having our family or maybe our roommates change our passwords for our social media when we feel, an episode coming on, like maybe we don't need as much sleep as we used to. Or doing whatever we can to keep us feeling and acting like ourselves. Overall, I just hope that this video helped you better understand what bipolar disorder is, and that it doesn't mean we're crazy or out of control. Just like any mental illness, it needs proper treatment and support. And when we have that, we can live a wonderful and fulfilling life. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.